Asatru, A Native European Spirituality by Stephen McNallen. Chapter 12. Fate or Freedom? The popular image of our pre-Christian ancestors is that they were unsophisticated fighters and drinkers who never thought about the finer points of philosophy. Historians or scholars who comment on the mental world of the Germanic people may observe that they were fatalistic and leave it at that. This picture is wrong on several counts. In this chapter, we'll take a look at the Germanic ideas of time, casuality, and free will versus determinism. Humans have always wondered about these things. Are we free agents, or only actors in a play whose script has been written in advance by the gods, or perhaps by an impersonal fate? If we have free will and the power to exercise it, then our deeds make a difference and our lives have meaning. If not, then our personal significance is negligible. The question of fate or freedom pours over into other areas such as morality. Can we be held accountable for our actions? And politics. Why should we care about political freedom if free will is only an illusion? To understand how Asatru answers these questions, we must first understand the lore of our ancestors. All of Germanic cosmology can be summed up in only two features: Urd's well and the world tree. The relationship between them expresses the concepts of time, space, casuality, fate, and the ethical values of the ancient tribes. Our ancestors spoke of the mythic world tree, Yggdrasil, and envisioned it as a gigantic U. Yggdrasil is both the framework and the content of the manifest, multidimensional universe. In its branches nestle all the worlds of gods, giants, dwarves, and elves. Our own world, Midgard, the enclosure in the middle, is also in the tree. The well. Yggdrasil has 3 roots. One is found in the home of the gods. Another looks out onto the land of the Rime giants. The third root extends into the misty world of Niflheim, where the roiling well Verglimir gives birth to thundering rivers with names like Storming, Loud Boiling, and Fearsome. Just as there are 3 roots, so are there 3 wells. Other than the aforementioned Verglimir, there is Mimir's well, from whose wisdom-giving waters Odin drank after plucking out one of his eyes for the privilege. The third is the well of Urd, and it figures very largely in the account that follows. While the lore describes 3 distinct wells, such repetition is common in myths, and we can think of them as 3 aspects of a single mythic well. In our discussion of fate and freedom, I'll refer to it as Urd's well. Time and the Norns. Our myths describe 3 female beings called the Norns. They are much like the fates of classical mythology and are reminiscent of Shakespeare's 3 weird sisters in the first scene of Macbeth. Urd is one of these Norns. She has 2 companions named Verdandi and Skuld, and together the 3 encompass the Norse ideas of time. Urd translates literally as that which has become, or the past. Verdandi is that which is becoming, or the present. Skuld means that which should be. While the past and the present can be easily defined, the future is only tentative or conditional. It is not determined in advance. We'll have more to say about the Norns in a moment. Casuality and free will. Urd's Well is the repository of all past actions. Into it go the deeds of gods, humans, and other beings in the worlds. These deeds are symbolized in the mythology by dew falling from the branches of the tree into the water of the well, for good or bad. However, they do not simply lie there static and forgotten. They roil and weave, connecting people and things in inconceivably complex ways. Chaos theory gives some insight into these complicated links. Many of us will have heard, for example, that the flutter of a butterfly's wings on one continent can cause a hurricane thousands of miles away. This sounds like an exaggeration designed to illustrate a point, but then I am no mathematician. So, how much control, if any, do we have over what happens to us? Past events continue to affect the present, but the individual's choices must also be figured into the equation. Can a man or woman overcome the momentum of the past by heroic will? Maybe, or maybe not, depending on the magnitude of the events in the well. Our ability to shape the outcome is a function of skill, wisdom, and prowess on many levels, ranging from physical strength to the intangible power one acquires through spiritual growth. Sometimes our overall might is great enough to prevail, but other times the odds are against us, and we are overwhelmed. In other words, the final outcome depends on cause and effect, both as manifested in Urd's Well from the past, and in the power of the person or group on whom these influences are acting in the present. There is no moral judgment or divine fiat involved, just the working of a multitude of interwoven events, both great and small. The role of the Norns, active or passive. In seeming contrast to the cause and effect model I've outlined here, many Azatruer believe that the Norns decide our fates in a literal and deterministic sense. This seems supported by the literature, where the Norns are said to determine the fates of men. Snorri, in the Deluding of Gylfi, that has the High One say of the Norns that these maidens shape men's lives. We call them the Norns. There are yet more Norns, those who come to each person at birth to decide the length of one's life, and these are related to the gods. Others are descended from the elves, and a third group come from the dwarves. It seems then that there are the three major Norns, or cosmological Norns, we have discussed so far: Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld. But there are also a host of lesser Norns that interact with humans from infancy. The latter are of varying quality. The best are related to the gods. Lesser ones are kin to the elves and the dwarves. In the Voluspa we read of the Norns that one is called Urd, the other Verdandi, the third Skuld. Scores they carved, laws they laid, lives they chose. They worked orlog for the sons of men. A superficial reading of this and similar material suggests that life's major events are determined in advance. This deterministic view may have prevailed among the common folk. There was neither internet nor an authorized handbook of religious dogma, and opinions would vary from person to person. To some, it must have seemed convenient to let the Norns take the blame for events. But what about a deeper understanding of the concept? Throughout the sagas and heroic lays, the Norns played roles that were similar, if not identical, to those of the Fylgja, Haminga, and the Valkyries. Everywhere else in this book, we discuss all three of these not as distinct entities, but as part of the individual soul complex. Might not the Norns likewise be a hidden part of our own selves, rather than independent beings dictating our fate? Edred Thorson seems to think so. He writes, "The Nornir are the medium through which action is received and transmuted into a projectable, but essentially unaltered form, and returned to the sphere from which that action was received." He restates this elsewhere. The Norns are not casual agents, but rather the numinous organisms through which the energies of actions are received, transformed, and redirected back to their source. In short, what we are dealing with here is a metaphysical law, much like karma. Insofar as the Norns give us anything at all, they give us what we have earned through our deeds. They need not exist as beings independent from our own psychophysical complex in order to carry out their task. However, this interpretation of the Norns is not a matter of required belief. Asatruer are free to think of them as external entities, if that makes more sense to them. But whether part of our own being or not, their role is ultimately passive. Germanic fatalism. It is sometimes said that the Germanic peoples, and particularly the Norsemen, were fatalistic. As we can see from the pages above, this is not true. The idea of events being predetermined, with humans relegated to the role of actors in a script written in advance, is alien to the Germanic mind. No god, no inherent structure of the cosmos forbids free will or sets limits on human activity. However, as we have seen, that does not mean we can do whatever we want, whenever we want. Although we are free from divine coercion, we are not free from cause and effect. The man whose leg is trapped by a fallen rock is not free to walk away, not because God or the gods or the Norns are forbidding it, but because he does not have the ability to overcome this obstacle. Philosophically, this means that to an extent limited only by our power, we are free to make our own fate. There is a word in Old Norse for this fate we fashion for ourselves. It is called Orlog, Americanized in the modern Asatru as Orlog. Literally, it means the primal layers placed in the well by the Norns. Heroism. It is our freedom that makes heroism possible. In any contest, we are expected to exert all our strength, skill, and will to gain victory. If we triumph, the experience increases our personal store of spiritual power. And if we do not win, defeat, not victory, is the true test of the hero. We may not be able to control circumstances, but we can control the way in which we react to them. An enemy can take away victory, and even take away our lives, but the hero does not allow the opponent to take away his or her poise, calm, and dignity. This is why characters in the sagas make casual jokes while dying, and why Viking hero Ragnar Lothbrok concludes his death song with the words, "Laughing I die." The ability to die with calm and consciousness shows self-possession and, paradoxically, the inability to be truly defeated. Asatru insists we assume the burdens and accept the rewards of free will. We are not puppets or pawns, but free men and women acting in the complex arena of the present under the influence of the past. We fight life's battles and in the process grow physically, spiritually, and mentally. For those who have mastered themselves and conquered their fear of death, life gives opportunities for shining heroism.